Is Matthew Perry's autobiography sexist, misogynistic? Not really, kind of, but not. Undecided on this one, so let's get into the video. Also, follow my new Instagram and I might just follow you back. I was very unsure about this one, so I let my friend Rob, who we used to do a podcast together, not anymore, life gets in the way. I had him read through the script, right, to see, just to see if he agreed with me, because I was so unsure because of like some people's reactions online. And he said this, so I'm just going to copy it word for word. Yeah, maybe a little bit sexist in the boring, old-fashioned way. He doesn't necessarily view women as less than him. He just can't seem to relate to them. So he doesn't know how to have relationships with them other than transactional ones. He hates himself too much to have an honest connection with anybody. So all of his interaction with women will necessarily be shallow. Rob's working on a book and he's going to write well better than anything what I could ever do. You can tell from that amazing Queen's English. He does sound like an adolescent with his bragging, so there's some arrested development there. So, why have I bothered to do this video? Because I was on TikTok, the cesspit, the hellhole that is TikTok. I was on TikTok and I saw people complaining that this book is sexist. You know, some people were really laying into it, so I'm just there like rubbing my hands with glee, like fantastic, good, extra content for me when people, you know, screw up and do dumb things. Fantastic. Love to see it, right? I love to see it. I'm a cynic. What can I say? I expect the worst in people. But now I have to be cynical of all the other cynics because I think people were chatting maybe a little bit of shit. Mate, I'm still unsure. It's just not the vibe that I was getting. The way people on TikTok made it sound, they made it sound as though, I don't know, that his behavior with Jennifer on the set of Friends was predatory. Like he made her feel really, really uneasy. We'll get into it. The book is called Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing. So I do think my conclusion to reading this before I even start the video is I think he's a womanizer at most, which isn't exactly a crime. You're famous in Hollywood. Who hasn't been a bit of a womanizer? The way he brags about sleeping with everyone, Tana Mojo does the same. I don't see anyone calling her a misandrist, do you know what I mean? I know maybe it's not exactly the same thing, but he talks a lot about addiction and recovery, and I've seen some people have a few issues with how he talks about that because he's gone down the very devoutly religious kind of AA route. I didn't do that. Tried it. Wasn't really my thing. But, you know, if it's worked for him and is currently working for him, who the hell am I or someone else to tell him to not do that? I'm agnostic. I'm an atheist. I don't care if people want to believe in a God. I don't care if people don't want to believe in a God. Do you want? Just leave me alone. He's a very troubled and very arrogant guy, but neither of those things are a crime, last I checked. There is a lot of humble bragging in this. I will have to say that. So I go over stuff a bit more from that angle because I just found it a bit funny. I think the biggest problem with this book is that it desperately needed an editor because there is so much repetition. Sometimes you are reading the exact same sentences a few times, you know, sporadically throughout the book. Prologue. It's day 7 of the pain, and by pain I don't mean a stubbed toe or the whole 10 yards. I capitalize pain because this was the worst pain I've ever experienced. It was the platonic ideal of pain, the exemplar. I've heard people claim that the worst pain is childbirth. Well, this was the worst pain imaginable, but without the joy of a newborn in my arms at the end of it. No uterus, no opinion. Or why do some people, why do some men think that pregnancy, oh, it's just 9 months of like, oh, a little bit discomfort and then you're fine? It is years of trauma that you're doing to your body. Years afterwards of sneezing and wetting yourself, cavities, hair falling out, blah, 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 blah. Don't even talk to me. Anyone, ever again. He's in pain because he hasn't taken a shit for 10 days. Does sound pretty painful. He's at a sober living house, age 49. In the sober living house in Southern California, I went back through that. Right. Okay. When people are criticizing a book and I see that, the TikToks were so fresh in my head that when I went into this, I did have the biased lens of trying to look for sexism where I could because I saw so many people complaining about it. Now, That's not unbiased of me. That's not very objective. It's human, but it's not that fair. So when I re-edited this, I disagreed with some, and I'm going to keep the disagreements in because I'm just going to show you that people can change over the course of one day. I had a view of West LA and 2 queen-size beds. The other bed was occupied by my assistant/best friend, Erin, a lesbian whose friendship I treasure because it brings me the joy of female companionship without the romantic tension that has seemed to ruin my friendships with straight women. Not to mention, we can talk about hot women together. Like that little aside at the end, that's a joke. Ain't that deep. But I said originally, so what? You can't have straight women for friends because you can only see them through the lens of sex. Interesting. And then I corrected it saying, it's not that deep. Calm down. There might be some people who even disagree with me. I don't know. I don't know. That's kind of why I'm putting this video out still, because I want to know what you guys think. Am I wrong? I'm always open to being wrong. I love having a go at myself. Catherine, the counsellor, just so happened to be a beautiful blonde woman to whom I apparently had proposed to upon my arrival, so she wasn't my biggest fan. Not kidding. I'd been so out of it when we'd arrived that I'd asked her to marry me and then properly fell down a flight of stairs. I think it's important to put this in the context of Matthew Perry also. I mean, if you read this book, you would think that he's the funniest person in the world because he tells you it throughout how funny he is, but he is a comedian and a comedic actor, and he does try and make jokes. So a lot of what he says about like women and wanting to proposed upon my arrival is probably just meant to come across as a joke, but maybe some people were trying to, like I was trying to go into it in a bit of bad faith already because I had a preconceived notion of what it was about due to the TikToks that I saw. And I'm a big enough person to put my hands up and say that I done goofed. I'm still not sure, and I think one of my friends is going to do a video on this, so it'll be very interesting to see the conclusion that they come to. So Matthew Perry lapsed into a coma at the hospital. The first thing that happened when I lapsed into a coma was that I aspirated into my breathing tube, vomited 10 days worth of toxic shit directly into my lungs. My lungs didn't like that very much. Enter instant pneumonia. And that is when my colon exploded. Let me repeat that for those in the back. My colon exploded. I've been accused of being full of shit before, but this time I really was. I take it back. That does sound worse than labour. I've not experienced either, but he almost died from this, but survived, obviously. He suffers a lot of complications, though. I knew I was on my way back when I realised that I was attracted to the therapist they assigned to me. I think I'm beginning to sense a theme, but again, I think he's just a womanizer. Is being a womanizer inherently sexist? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. Maybe if you're tricking people into having sex with you, that's bad. You know, if you're promising them this, that, the other. But there's a moment later on where he says about what he would say to women on dates, that he's not up for being anyone's boyfriend, he just wants to have fun. Is there anything wrong with being upfront? But no, not really. That's just called a friends with benefits or a no strings attached thing. There's nothing if you're being upfront. Anyway, chapter 1. His dad abandoned his family to be an actor in LA. There I was already, the performer, the people pleaser. Who knows, maybe I even did a little Chandler Bing startled double take just to land the line. Even at 3 years old, I'd learned I'd have to be the man of the house. Rob and I disagreed on this, but I'm doubling down on it. Have you met any 3-year-olds recently? Because I'm pretty sure a 3-year-old isn't thinking this type of thing, even if they are very sensitive. A 3-year-old thinks things like, let me watch Coco Melon 20 times in a row. I would know this. I frequently help babysit a 3-year-old. Don't think that 3-year-old is trying to be the big adult of the house. People might want to contest that and be like, well, when I was 3 years old, but you're looking back through that through the lens of yourself, subjectively, i.e. I don't think it's possible to be objective about like if you have memories of being a 3-year-old. I think you're swayed by who you are now. But soon I had a beautiful sister. Caitlin was as cute as could be, and I loved her instantly. But there was now a family growing up around me, a family I didn't really feel a part of. It was around this time that I made the conscious choice to say, fuck it, it's every man for himself. That's when the bad behaviour started. I got shitty grades, I started smoking, I beat up Pierre's son, and eventual Prime Minister himself, Justin Trudeau. That is quite the humble brag. That is quite the name drop. I deeply cared what strangers thought of me. Still do. Now I just feel bad about doing this. This video is sponsored by me and my own merch store. Head over to ayclothing.tmail.com to grab yourself some merch. We still have the festive Die Cry Hate line because I just think they're neat. And it is the January sale, so it's 20% off of everything all across store, everything possible except for like the joggers because it's the lowest price that they go to anyway. So cop yourself some merch, 20% off for all of January, ayclothing.tmail.com. Even though I was now a big brother, I was also the bad kid. One year I went through all the closets before Christmas to see what my presents were. Yeah, that's proper delinquent behaviour, that. Matthew was also almost a pro tennis player. Somehow, since 3rd grade, we developed a way of talking that went, could it be any hotter? Or could the teacher be any meaner? Or could we be more in detention? A cadence you might remember if you're a fan of Friends, or if you've noticed how America has been talking for the past couple of decades or so. I don't think it's an exaggeration to suggest that Chandler Bing transforms the way America spoke. He mentions this a further 20 times in the book, by the way. The key to the problem I would come to understand was this. I lacked both spiritual guidelines and an ability to enjoy anything. But at the same time, I was also an excitement addict. This was such a toxic combination, I can't even. Bro, you're like 50. Why are you writing like a 20-something-year-old girl? Do you think Alyssa Violet will message you back if you do? You know what I'm talking about, right? Matthew Perry moves to LA to his father's at 15. No one needed to know that. So I told everyone I was in pain so I could get oxytocin. Pretty soon, the 80 milligrams a day of oxytocin I'd conned them into giving me wasn't working anymore, and I needed more. When I asked the doctors for more, they said no. When I called a drug dealer, he said yes. Now all I had to do was figure out a way to get... So the book also it has interludes, so it goes from, him being younger to an interlude of more present day. But sometimes in the being younger parts, it also skips around everywhere. Like I said, this book really needed an editor. So right now, we're in an interlude. And now all I had to do was figure out a way to get 40 floors down from my $20 million penthouse apartment without Erin spotted me. I bought the place, I swear to God, because Bruce Wayne lived in such an apartment in The Dark Knight. In the first chapter, he mentioned spending millions on rehab, and I thought, why should I mention that? Whatever, who cares? But what relevance does his apartment, his penthouse being $20 million, have to the story? It doesn't. It's not a autobiographical plot point. It's humble bragging, and he does this so frequently. I was on the 3rd floor all around. New York purred in the distance, going about its business, living life while their favourite sarcastic sitcom star was in hell one more time. Chapter 2. I think halfway through this, I gave up with the chapters as well. So this is fun. This is great. It's Christmas. Okay. I have no excuse. So he's in LA and he wants to be an actor. Something else hit me that had never occurred to me before. Death. Fear of death. Questions like, why are we all here? What's the meaning of all this? What is the point? How do we all arrive at this? What are human beings? What is air? All these questions poured into my brain like a tidal wave. I was just rounding a fucking corner. The drink and that walk opened up a chasm in me that's still there. I was so troubled. I was an extremely screwed up guy. I used to drink and drug just to get away from these questions. It don't work, by the way. It does not work. His dad used to drink too. So his dad went for a walk and quit drinking and hasn't had a drop since. Excuse me? You went for a walk and quit drinking? I have spent upward of $7 million trying to get sober. I have been to 6,000 AA meetings. Not an exaggeration, more an educated guess. I've been to rehab 15 times. I've been in a mental institution. I've gone to therapy twice a week 30 years, been to death's door, and you went for a fucking walk? All right, show off. He's joking around. But my dad can't write a play, star in Friends, help the helpless, and he doesn't have $7 million to spend on anything. Life has its trade-offs, I suppose. Okay. By 1986, I was pretty sure fame would change everything, and I yearned for it more than any other person on the face of the planet. I needed it. It was the only thing that would fix me. I was certain of it. Yeah, you and every other famous person who's also an addict thinks this. Like Russell Brand's been saying this stuff for years too. Don't work, does it? Thanks to my training back in Canada, I knew I was able to listen and help women in crisis. If you're a woman and you are in duress and you sing a song about it, I will listen to it over and over and over. So there I was in the 101 coffee shop, holding court with a gaggle of young women, quick with a line and a smirk and a willing ear. Okay. When you're nearly 16, days seem endless, especially when you're charming a bunch of young women in greasy spoon in Hollywood. I must have been really on that day too, because as I joked around, a middle-aged guy walked past the booth and put a note in the napkin in front of me on the table and walked away and right out the door. The girls all stopped chattering. I looked at the guy's back as he left, then did a prototype of Chandler's double take, getting more laughs. Sure you did, Matthew. A dude randomly gives Matthew his number at a cafe with the note that he wants to cast him in his film. Matthew rings the number, which is wild in the year of 2023. Nowadays, you could just Google the number to make sure that it is legit. Luckily, he doesn't get a human trafficked, but it's a real offer. Matt co-stars in the film with the late River Phoenix. River was a... Get ready for this next bit. River was a beautiful man inside and out, too beautiful for this world, it turned out. It always seems to be the really talented guys who go down. Oh my God, I have literally written like 2 pages worth of stuff for this next bit. Don't ever come for my Keanu Reeves. It always seems to be really the talented people who go down. Why is it that the original thinkers like River Phoenix and Heath Ledger die, but Keanu Reeves still walks among us? Really, Matthew, you want to fire shots at the nicest man in Hollywood, who no one has a bad word to say about professionally. And I actually have friends that did something with their media degree and went on to work in film and TV. So I get some gossip about some of the stars that they've worked with. And Keanu Reeves, by all accounts, nice guy. So I know that personally via people. There are some, going off script now, I shouldn't say, I'm going to say it. There are some actors who always appear in these lists of, top 10, like best people in Hollywood to work with, like, nicest actors, blah, blah, blah. And you won't find nasty things about them online. But I know through people who work on movie sets that they're not nice people. So if Keanu was an asshole, I would have heard about it. And one of those... I'm just going to say it. Jason Momoa. I always see him in those lists. Apparently he's not very nice. Anyway, but apparently Ryan Reynolds is. And I'm heartbroken by that because I do not trust the guy. But anyway, Keanu is 100 times the man you could ever be. He's not busy thirsting after more than a half his age Alyssa Violet for one thing, you arrogant petty man. That's true though. You all know that Matthew Perry did that, right? Does that make him sexist or does that make him just an average older actor in Hollywood? Who knows? Now, here's the thing. Matthew Perry would be well aware, especially by now, that River and Keanu were besties. They were best friends. So this mention of Keanu in the same sentence as River Phoenix feels deliberate to me and spiteful, especially as he goes on for, a page or so to go on about how much he liked working with River, how talented he was, etc., etc. And, with the entire context of the whole book of Matthew just wanting to be the person that gets the attention in a room. Boy, does he tell us that. I feel like he was mad that someone else got the attention of River Phoenix. Don't you ever talk to me or my son Keanu again. And for a book about addiction, this question is a bit dumb. Why are River and Heath Ledger no longer with us? For the same reason that Taylor Hawkins and many others aren't. Drugs, overdoses, tragic deaths all taken before their time, but preventable. Addiction is a disease. It's not your fault that you were born this way with a brain that, whatever it may, for me, it's my dopamine don't work properly, So I like to seek in the form of Coca-Cola. I did some Googling about his book and I found an article quoting his book. It comes up later. But he bemoans that he can't watch Friends anymore because the thing that always makes me cry is that it's not fair. It's not fair that I had to go through this disease while the other 5 didn't. And I feel like this a lot of the time too. Like, it's not fair that I can't drink or do drugs. I was at a house party recently and literally every single person there was like on Coke or MDMA or shrooms, all free. And yeah, of course I'd love to, but it would ruin my life if I did, so I can't. But some people can do that and then still go to work the next day, and I can't do that, It's Christmas time. It'll be lovely to have some cocktails and red wine, and I'm very jealous of the people. Nice to have some champagne at New Year's Eve. But I can't, and I do get a bit like, oh, well, boo-hoo-hoo, but is what it is. But the way that he makes it sounds a bit like he kind of almost sort of wants someone else to go through the issue. Like, instead of it. Do you get me? So my point is, it's not our faults that our brains are like this, but we have the choice every day to drink or not, to use or not. Ultimately. Every day up until this second, since almost 4 years ago, I've gritted my teeth and I've made the choice to not get a baggie, to stay sober, as hard as it is, because the alternative is painful death, cardiac arrest, heart scarred, grey matter depleted, possible cancer, whatever. Also, cocaine's not ethical or vegan. Heartbroken to find that out. They do something to the rainforest to get heartbroken. So what is Perry sniperly trying to say here? These great artists who I liked died from drug overdoses, preventable drug overdoses. But it's not fair that Keanu Reeves hasn't died yet. What are you saying? I don't think he can hide behind it's just a joke because he waxes lyrical about River Phoenix for a whole page. So is it really just a joke? And apparently, according to US Weekly, Reeves reportedly thought that Perry's comment came out of left field. Leave us alone. The sheer irony in this, you can tell I got riled up, is Keanu Reeves is more of an original thinker than Perry could ever hope to be. I would know, I read your autobiography, all right. He's considerate, Keanu that is, introverted, incredibly well-read. Keanu Reeves had to read Simulacra and Simulation and understand it to play the part of Neo per the Wachowski sisters' requirements for the Matrix films. The whole cast had to. I have Simulacra and Simulation. I do not understand. Me, with my big brains, don't understand it. And I would bet these vegan gravy granules that I am smarter than Matthew Perry. That's not me being like rude to Matthew Perry. It's just I am so incredibly big brained and high IQ'd, and yet I can't understand Simulacra and Simulation. To be fair, it's been a few years since I tried to read it, so I'll give it a bash. All I'm saying is Keanu Reeves is so much smarter than I think a lot of people realise or give him credit for. Did you see that one time he wrote that sort of dark satirical book? It's called An Ode to Happiness. It's a grown-up picture book. A charming reminder to not take oneself too seriously. I wash my hair with regret shampoo. Then I put on my Alone Again silk pajamas, etc., etc. The book just goes on like this. My dude has a dark sense of humour and he's very smart, so leave us alone, Matthew Perry. Don't ever come for my boy Keanu Reeves ever again. He is literally one of two people I would take a bullet for, and the other person is an animal. Perry said, I'm actually a big fan of Keanu. I just chose a random name. My mistake. I apologise. I should have used my own name instead. I neither believe nor forgive you, begone thought. He gets a beautiful girlfriend but has impotence from drinking. He's a teenager at this point. They power through and he loses his virginity. And how, pray tell, did you manage to pay such a debt, Mr. Perry, to such an onerous debt to this woman who saved your life in one of the most meaningful ways imaginable? Why, good reader, I paid that debt to Trisha by sleeping with almost every woman in Southern California. The following day, I felt bothered by what had happened and already in therapy. I shared the story with my therapist. I'm going to tell you a story and it's going to help you, he said. When a woman comes over to your place and she takes off her shoes, you're going to get laid. If she leaves them on, you won't. I was 18 then. I'm 52 now. And he has been right 100% of the time. There have been times I've cheated a little and left a pair of shoes at my doorstep as a kind of hint that this is where the shoes go. But that therapist's insight has been correct every single time. If a woman keeps her shoes on, it's a makeout session at best. Why are you keeping your shoes on in the house anyway, Yanks? My Asian household could never. That's not even a joke. It used to be something that I didn't even really think of or care about. But then I met my Chinese French boyfriend. And now it's a huge thing for me too. Take your outside is dirty. Take your shoes off at the door. Don't be trampling all around. I'm going to have to hoover up now. Honestly. Years later, Trisha and I would date again while Friends was at its peak. She didn't abandon me, but old fears crept up and I ended the relationship. I only wish I could truly feel that she didn't abandon me, truly believe that. Maybe things would be better. So Perry does have this, right, half of my brain, sunk cost fallacy. I read the whole book. I wrote are you dumb? Almost 20 page review about it. It would have been, if I don't do something with it, it'll be a waste of time. So I should make this video. But the other part of me is like, but I don't even know. But then Rachel Oates did say to me, wise words, not all your content needs to be negative. You know, you can change your mind or, mention some, it doesn't need to, though negativity does the best on YouTube. So even though I'm not entirely sure whether this book is sexist or not, and I'm kind of leaving it to you, the reader, to make up your mind about it too, sometimes when I'm writing the reviews, it's a different experience to when I sit here and I'm speaking them aloud and the words come to life, which is why sometimes I laugh at, something that I might have not laughed at reading it, but saying it aloud, different story. So I'm kind of thinking, by saying this stuff aloud, maybe I can also work out whether or not it is sexist or not. That is the question. Is this book sexist? I do think that Perry has this pattern of putting women on pedestals, putting them way up here, thinking that they're going to solve all of his dramas, and then devaluing them once they don't magically fix all of his problems. But that's not exclusive to him. Plenty of men do that. There are so many stories in Hollywood films in which, you know, your life is magically going to get better once you bag the perfect woman, once you pedestal women. We're just people. We're not angels. We're not devils. We're just people. The same as you men. Interlude again. I was in Don't Look Up at 1.2, and even though I was also heading to rehab in Switzerland, I nevertheless went to Boston to shoot my bit. While there, I pitched a line to Adam that he loved, which became the blow to the scene, which is what you're always hoping for. He ended up not using the scene. Shit happens, no bigs. The point being, Adam McKay and I got on really well, and here he was loving my pitch. Humble bragging again. He is always the one with the funniest line, of course. But the Adam he's speaking to on the phone and he's pitching an idea to, it's the wrong Adam. Maybe he's the funniest guy in the room, but ain't the smartest. Perry once thought that he was hanging out with M. Night Shyamalan, the director of, you know, The Sixth Sense, The Village, etc., all night, and thought that, you know, they were getting on so well that Perry would be in Shyamalan's next film. But it turned out he was so drunk that he didn't realise he was just chilling with some random Indian dude instead. That could happen to anyone, I guess. Chapter 3. I can't decide if I actually like people or not. Most relatable thing he said, we can be friends again. According to Malcolm Gladwell, if you did anything for 10,000 hours, you could be an expert. This made me an expert in 2 areas, 1980s tennis and drinking. I did a quick math and I was an expert at drinking drugs too, but that's not like really a brag. I think that's half the people in England. I did have to head into early retirement just to give everyone a chance though. He sounds the way we do, which was the highest praise I could give someone. But before I could truly get to see how funny Craig was, there was the second thing I should tell you about Sydney. During filming, I fell madly in love with Valerie Bertinelli, who was clearly in a troubled marriage and truly getting off on 2 of the funniest guys on the planet, adoring her and heaping their attention on her. Yeah, sure you are, Matt. Okay. No Rich Diawadi. But for me, being on Sydney and playing the fool with Valerie was more than just fun. It was serious shit. I was having to hide my love for her as we worked. This wouldn't be the last time this happened, which was desperately difficult. My crush was crushing. Not only was she way out of my league, but she was also married to one of the most famous rock stars on the planet, Eddie Van Halen. As for me, well, I was always able to get laid because I made women laugh. You know when some men complain about, I'm not able to get laid, women are such bitches and whores. How does that work? Women are whores because they won't sleep with me. Doesn't make sense, does it? Simplest solution. Are you funny? Do you have a funny personality? Work on that then. You don't even need to have a particularly nice or good personality as long as you're funny. I've given some mentalists a chance because I thought that they were funny. I was always able to get laid because I made women laugh, but I knew that being funny always came in second to musicians. In the world of music, there's a hierarchy too. It's my contention that bass players tend to get laid first because they're stolid and cool and their fingers move in gentle yet powerful ways. Except for Paul McCartney, he never got laid first. Drummers come next because they're all power and grit, then guitarists because they get those fancy solos, then weirdly the lead singer because even though he's up there out front, he never quite looks fully sexy when he has to throw his head back and reveal his molars to hit a high note. You shouldn't have to do that to hit a high note anyway, actually, so you just don't know what you're talking about, do you? Well, please, bass players, are you kidding? This is how it goes. This is the hierarchy of band members people want to sleep with. Lead singer, lead guitarist, drummer, roadie, manager, coffee boy, bass player. Dabbing on all the bass players. The only exception to this is the band Fall Out Boy, where it goes like this. Bass player Pete Wentz. That's it. The end. Anyway, that said, there was one night I was over at Valerie and Eddie's house, just hanging out and gazing at Valerie, trying to make her laugh. When you made her laugh, you felt 10 feet tall. As the night progressed, it was clear that Eddie enjoyed the fruits of a vine a little too hard. One more time, and eventually he just passed out, not 10 feet away from us, but still. This was my chance. If you think I didn't actually have a chance in hell, you'd be wrong, dear reader. Valerie and I had an elaborate makeout session. Good for you, you snogged a married woman. Am I meant to be impressed? Also, I'm not sure if Eddie Van Halen ever knew this because I looked up some articles and Valerie was like, oh, she was a bit embarrassed by this. So I don't know if this was already common knowledge before you wrote this book. Shouldn't kiss and tell, should you, Matt? They never hook up again, and she pretends it didn't happen. He really thought that she was going to divorce Eddie Van Halen for him. For someone that clearly struggles with his self-esteem, he also does think quite highly of himself. It's a weird, contradictory, paradoxical book. I have spent my life being attracted to unavailable women. It doesn't take a psychology degree to find out this has something to do with my relationship with my mother. Yeah, sure, blame your mum for all of your issues. It's giving, if only I were Putin's mother. Ever since then, I've been addicted to the turn. Once the turn happened, I could start making a woman laugh and making her want me sexually. Once the sex was done, reality set in, and I realised that I didn't know these women at all. They were available, so I had no need for them. I had to get back out there and try to make the turn. That's why I slept with so many women. I was trying to recreate my childhood and win. I do love when people psychoanalyze themselves to find excuses for their behaviours without mentioning how this would have affected others. This is just, yep, it's my mum's fault I used up women like tissues. To this day, no one has made me laugh as hard as Craig Burko. Being funnier than Hank, David and me as a threesome was pretty much impossible, but Craig managed it. Being funnier than Hank and me without David was also unheard of, but Craig managed that too. If you're so funny, then why am I not laughing at this book? Garth Marenghi's Terror Tome, you are not. By the way, I'm going to review that just to put out some positivity to the universe, just to prove that I just don't sit here slagging things off all the time. Matthew and his cronies go to Vegas. He's in his 20s and he wins a bunch of money, so he decides to go to a strip club to have sex. I don't think that's how that works. What? We're supposed to be having sex, I said. I spent a small fortune in here. Then she explained to me for some reason that I could arrange the pillows wherever I wanted to. That's wonderful, and I'm excited about the pillow thing. I really am. But aren't we supposed to be doing something else right now? I asked / begged. Are you the police? She asked. No, I said, though I was beginning to wonder if I should call them to report a fraud. I paid you all that money. We had a deal. Okay. I shouldn't have been surprised, but around that time I got a phone call from my then business manager. Matthew, you are out of money. How about a little warning? I said, scared to death. Did it occur to you that a few months ago you could have given me a heads up, via a call in which you said, hey Matthew, your funds are looking a bit anemic, instead of waiting till I was now broke? Wow, he sounds just like Chanandla Bong. Despite my misgivings, to repeat, it was a comedy about baggage handlers set 200 years in the future where the aliens are played by little people. The pilot paid me $22,500. I'm in the wrong industry. I was devastated. When I read the script for Friends Like Us, it was as if someone had been following me around for a year, stealing my jokes, copying my mannerisms, photocopying my world-weary yet witty view of life. Oh, it's so contradictory. He loves himself but also hates himself. Can't relate. I'm just full of self-loathing. One character in particular stood out to me. It wasn't that I thought I could play Chandler. I was Chandler. But I was also Blaine in LAX 2194. Fuck me. Is everyone kidding? Am I the least lucky person on the planet? Oh no, I'm so unlucky because I got paid a yearly salary to start in a pilot episode or something. Everyone in Hollywood is auditioning for Chandler, but Perry isn't allowed to because of his other obligations with this pilot. So he helps his actor friends audition for the role despite feeling like he is Chandler. That is some stage 10 cuckery right there. Couldn't be me. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be helping people because I'm bitter. Chandler finally gets given... No, Matthew Perry. Oh, he is Chandler. I ironically wrote him as... Okay. Matthew Perry finally gets given a chance for the audition because his weird LAX show was going nowhere. Spoiler alert. He gets the part. There are two kinds of drug addicts. The ones who want to go up and the ones who want to go down. I can never understand the coke guys. Why would anyone want to feel more present, more busy? I was a downer guy. Well, that's because the uppers are amazing and feel great. To begin with. I wish I was on it right now. You know what? Uppers, they make everyone else more interesting. Would make this video more interesting for me if I was on them. Friends was such a good and fun job that it curtailed everything for a while at least. I was the second baseman for the New York Yankees. I couldn't fuck that up. I would never forgive myself. When you're earning $1 million a week, you can't afford to have the 17th drink. That is very humble of him. About 3 weeks before my audition for Friends, I was alone in my apartment on Sunset and 10th floor. It was very small, but had a great view, of course, and I was reading in the newspaper about Charlie Sheen. It said that Sheen was yet again in trouble for something, but I remember thinking, why does he care? He's famous. It is nice to see that nothing truly changes. Now, all these years later, I'm certain that I got famous so I would not waste my entire life trying to get famous. You have to get famous to know that it's not the answer, and nobody who is not famous will ever truly believe that. How are you gatekeeping thoughts and critical thinking? How? I am not famous, and I know fame won't magically fix any of my problems. In fact, if I became rich and famous tomorrow, I would be more tempted than ever to start doing coke again, to start doing drugs again. Because fuck it, why not? I'm at the top. Why not? What more do I have to try and strive for? Why not? In my opinion, in my humble, honest opinion though, I think that fame is nothing without the money anyway, because fame by itself doesn't fix things. It just kind of means you have a lot of recognition and people hound you and expect things out of you and have parasocial relationships, and that don't sound good or fun or fresh. But money, well, financial security. So people say money doesn't bring you happiness, and by itself, no, it doesn't. But it does bring financial security, which can help in happiness. It does bring access to, therapy, vacations, better food, etc. Money certainly fucking helps, right? Interlude. I bought her a ring because I was desperate that she would leave me. I didn't want to be this injured and alone during COVID. All of that fame, and it didn't fix his problems with abandonment. Who would have thunk it? Not me, of course. I need to be famous to understand that fame doesn't fix shit. How stupid does he think he is? How dare you? Have you read Simulacra and Simulation, Matthew? Do you understand it? God, I hope not, because then I would feel dumb. I was in Switzerland at the time. Matthew, not me. At yet another rehab. This one was at a villa on Lake Geneva with his own butler and Okay. With his own butler and chef, the kind of luxurious place where you were guaranteed to not meet anybody else, thereby pretty much defeating the purpose of every rehab I've ever heard of. But what it lacked in fellow sufferers, it made up for in the easy availability of drugs, which again, unfortunately, did not differentiate it from other high-priced rehabs. I could make millions if I sued these places, but it would divert more attention to the situation, which I didn't want to do. A lot of addicts can't afford to get help or support. A lot of people will go to LA because, not LA, AA. LA won't help with your drug problems. A lot of people go to AA because it kind of is free. I mean, you can give like a quid or a couple of quid at the end, but for a lot of people, that's for most people, for everyone, that's way more affordable than going to a rehab and having to pay like what, $5,000, 10, who knows. My point is a lot of people can't afford to get help or support and don't have accessibility to reaching out to support networks in the first place. National healthcare is a great thing. My mum's not very well at the moment, so she's having to get treatments through the NHS, and it's wonderful. It's free and they're on the ball with it for more serious stuff. For less serious stuff, the addiction is serious, but for things like access to therapy, you can be on waiting lists for ages. For access to mental health services, you can be like, one of my friends wanted to get an ADHD diagnosis and the waiting list was about 18 months on the NHS, right? My dad has to get a new hip, I think. Bloody hell. He has to get a new hip. The waiting list is about 12 months. My mum, her illness is a little bit more serious, so she's getting seen to straight away. National healthcare, it's an amazing thing. However, for some people that don't want to wait, they can go private. Like one of my friends, I went private for my ADHD diagnosis because I didn't want to be on a waiting list for so long. I just wanted to know. But I'm in a situation where I could afford to do that. People that might need help for mental health issues and addiction and stuff might be on waiting lists for a while. They don't, and they won't have the money to go private, to just because having the money to go private, it's just like it's just speeding up the process. Basically, you're kind of like fast. It's like a fast pass at Disneyland. You're getting ahead of the queue or whatever. So I understand that him throwing money at the problem didn't fix things. Don't need to be famous to work that one out either, Mr. Matthew Perry. But when you're talking about you're at beautiful Lake Geneva in beautiful Switzerland with butler and a chef, it's luxurious. It still didn't work, but it's luxurious. I understand what he's saying, but my sympathy can only extend so far with this issue when he does repeat that he spent like 7 million on rehab. He does repeat it a lot, and I understand his point is he spent so much on money on it and it didn't do shit. But at the same time, there's a cost of living crisis, so maybe read the room a tiny bit. A lot of people don't even have 100 grand, not 100, even I don't have 100 grand to throw at anything. A lot of people don't even have like £100 to, you can't even get a private diagnosis for anything for £100, I think. My point is, you understand my point. I'm not trying to be a bitch. I'm just trying to be honest, but not in the most honest YouTuber, Anision kind of way. I'm trying to have empathy, and I do, but it can only go so far for me. Read the room a little bit. At rehab, he takes prescription drugs, including ketamine, and then they give him propofol for a surgery, and his heart stops for 5 minutes. When it came time to leave Switzerland, I was still on 1,800 milligrams of Oxy every single fucking day. I was told that once back in Los Angeles, right, and if you've taken a bit of umbrage with what I just said about like him mentioning the money thing, hold your angry comment and listen to this. I was told that once back in Los Angeles, I'd still be able to get that much, and I needed it just to stay level. As ever, this was not getting me getting high. This was purely maintenance, so I didn't go through agonies, because his body is just so used to having a certain amount of drugs in him every day. I flew back on a private jet. There was no way I could fly commercial, given that everyone in the world recognized my damn face. And it cost me a cool $175,000 to do so. Back in LA, I went to see my doctor. I need 1,800 milligrams a day, I said. No point beating around the bush. Oh no, she said. We're not giving you that at all. Cancer patients only get 100 milligrams. This only upped my gratitude that I didn't have cancer. But the doctor in Switzerland told me that's what I'd be on when I got home. Oh, they'll consult, she said, but I'm in charge now. Here's 30 milligrams. This would not do. I would get incredibly sick. There was only one thing for it. That very same night, I booked another $175,000 private jet and flew right back to Switzerland. Do you see a little bit more? Maybe you were on the fence before. Maybe you just thought, no, I'm wrong and I'm being a dick. But he repeatedly goes on about how much money he spent on XYZ and $20 million, blah, 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 blah. By the end of the book, he admits that he likes to just buy houses, move into them, and then buy new ones and move into them continuously. I think he's got a slight addiction with spending money. I get it, but read the room a little bit. There's a cost of living crisis right now. Maybe read the room. Anyway, back in LA one more time, trying to sober up. I think, wait, how did I get engaged? There are dogs living in my house. How did this happen? I had asked her parents, begged for her hand while high, and put up with the dogs. That's how scared I was of being abandoned. Bro is 50. He's in his 50s and still risking women as collateral damage in his quest to not deal with his issues head on. It's understandable in your 20s. Fine, like, get out your system in your 20s, be a jerk, whatever. But by this point, again, my sympathy can only extend so far. This is the Arrested Development part that Rob was on about. Chapter 4. For the longest time, I didn't really want to talk too much about friends. Partly that was because I'd done plenty of other stuff too, but all anyone wanted to talk about was Chandler. I think people mainly wanted to talk about the will they won't they of Ross and Rachel. Growing up, Friends gets a lot of flack now, but I got a soft spot for it. Some of the stuff really hasn't aged well at all, admittedly, but that's just called, it's like a lot of stuff, not a lot of the stuff, some parts of Sex and the City didn't age very well either, but that it's just called progress. You know, we're going to look back on stuff that we've done now, stuff that we think is really progressive and ahead of its time now. We're going to look back at this stuff in 20 years' time and be like, ooh, wouldn't say that now. That's not acceptable nor suitable or appropriate. You know, so it gets a lot of flack, but it's like, well, put into context. And yeah, there were shows in the 90s that didn't make fun of certain issues. I get that too, but not everyone has brilliant 2020 vision. Not everyone, whatever. Certain things were a little bit more acceptable back then. It's called progress. So I grew up watching Friends and really enjoying it. And Chandler, I'm sorry, Matthew Perry, he was my least favourite friend. Actually, it was joint position. I liked Ross and Joey. Most people really don't like Ross now. He's not aged well in a lot of people's eyes. But I think David Schwimmer did a very good job at... He did a lot of kind of physical acting, like comedic acting with Ross, and I feel like he got some, I don't know, like the whole My Sandwich thing, or when he has the leather pants or whatever. And Joey, well, come on, let's be real. As a little kid, I just had a big crush on Joey. But yeah, Chandler he would not have been my go-to friend if I'd have wanted to meet them when I was younger. It would have been Ross and Joey all the way. Sorry, Matthew Perry. Sorry. Maybe I'm wrong. It's like James Taylor talking about Fire and Rain. A gruesome little tale if you ever heard what that's about. It's like a band who've written a brilliant new album, but all anyone wants to hear is when they play live is the hits. I always admired Kurt Cobain's refusal to play Smells Like Teen Spirit or Led Zeppelin's refusal to play Stairway to Heaven. The New York Times once said, "Friends sticks to Perry like a sweaty shirt." They weren't right about that. In fact, that's just fucking cruel. But they weren't the only ones to think it. Perry thinks he is the Smells Like Teen Spirit of the Friends Nirvana, despite all of them being individual and memorable and bringing their own thing to the table. He thinks he was the MVP. Okay. Jennifer and I had met through mutual acquaintances about 3 years earlier. I was immediately taken by her. How could I not be? And liked her. And I got the sense she was intrigued too. Maybe it was going to be something. Back then, I got 2 jobs in one day. One was Haywire, an America's Funniest Home Videos type show, and the other was a sitcom. So I called Jennifer and I said, "You're the first person I wanted to tell this to." Bad idea. I could feel ice forming through the phone. Looking back, it was clear that this made her think I liked her too much or in the wrong kind of way, and I only compounded the error by then asking her out. She declined, which made it very difficult to actually go out of her. But then she said she'd love to be friends with me, and I compounded the compound by blurting, "We can't be friends." Can't friends, woman, can only sex with them. Courtney Cox was wearing a yellow dress and was cripplingly beautiful. I had heard about Lisa Kudrow from a mutual friend, and she was just as gorgeous and hilarious and incredibly smart as my friend had said. At least he threw in a hilarious and smart, huh? Matty LeBlanc was nice and a cool customer, and David Schwimmer had his hair cut really short. So? Over his hangdog face, and was incredibly funny right away, warm and smart and creative. I mean, he doesn't call David and Matt fit or beautiful, but whatever. This was all too true, both for Chandler and for me. Fairly early in the making of Friends, I realised that I was still crushing badly on Jennifer Aniston. Our hellos and goodbyes became awkward. And then I'd ask myself, how long can I look at her? Is 3 seconds too long? But that shadow disappeared in the hot glow of the show. That and her deafening lack of interest. People really tried to make out that this was predatory behaviour towards him. I don't think so. I think, okay, he had a crush on her. She didn't return it. He got over it eventually. I don't know. And she got over it too, because later on in the book, the rest of the friends are worried about him, and she's the one that goes to his trailer to be like, "We're worried about, your drinking and your drug taking and stuff." So she clearly felt comfortable enough to do that with him. I feel like people were exaggerating certain elements of this book, really trying to see it in bad faith. And I was talking in a way that no one had talked in sitcoms before, hitting odd emphasis. Picking a word in a sentence you might not imagine was the beat, utilising the Murray-Perry cadence. I didn't know it yet, but my way of speaking would filter into the culture across the next few decades. Could I be any more humble? I suppose he's right, actually. Then we had to wait a summer before the show first aired. I filled that summer with 3 notable things: gambling in Vegas at the behest of Jimmy Burrows, a trip to Mexico on my own, and a makeout session in a closet with Gwyneth Paltrow. I was back in Williamstown, Massachusetts, when I met Gwyneth. She was doing a play there, and I was visiting my grandfather. At some big party, we slipped off into a broom cupboard and made out. You're meant to kiss and not tell, bro. And what would I tell God when he reminded me of my prayer, the one I'd whispered 3 weeks before I got into Friends? God, you can do whatever you want to me. Just please make me famous. He was about to keep one half of the bargain, but this also meant he could do whatever he wanted with me as the other half. I was completely at the mercy of a God who was sometimes merciful and sometimes thought it was perfectly fine to put his own son on a fucking cross. My guy, you aren't exactly Joshua H. Christ, are you? If your God is so loving, why would he put you through bad shit in the first place that you've barely survived through? Everything was good. Everything was golden. I had just turned 25. I was in the biggest sitcom on the planet. I was in a hotel in New York watching as the world leaders were hustled into elevators by flanks of security, putting on a $1,000 suit ahead of joshing up with Dave Letterman or at Show Off. This was fame. And just beyond the glare of the city, beyond the skyscrapers and the faint stars twinkling beyond the midtown skies, God looked down on me, just waiting it out. He's got all the time in the world. Fuck, he invented time. Why does God personally have it out for Matthew Perry? Could I be any more egoic? I also had a new and very famous girlfriend of my own, but she goes to another school in Canada. You guys won't have heard of it. Interlude. The pandemic was slightly easier for me to handle for 2 reasons. 1, it was happening outside of my head. And 2, it gave me a pretty damn good excuse for hiding out in my 10,400 square foot apartment on the entire 40th floor of the Century building in Century City. Do you guys believe me yet? He breaks up with his girlfriend. Chapter 5. It's 1995 and he and Julia Roberts are dating. Season 1 of Friends had been a smash hit and I basically floated into season 2. I'd done Letterman. I was slated to do Leno. we'd hit the cover of People magazine and Rolling Stone magazine when both were a big deal. Now the movie offers were coming in. Why would they not? I was getting anything I wanted. $1 million movie here, $1 million movie offer there. I was no Julia Roberts, but there was only one of those. Then something that only happens to famous people happened. Marta Kaufman approached me and said that I should probably send flowers to Julia Roberts. You mean the biggest star in the universe, Julia Roberts? Sure, great. Why? I said. Turned out Julia had been offered the post-Super Bowl episode in season 2 and would only do the show if she could be in my storyline. Let me say that again. She would only do the show if she could be in my storyline. Was I having a good year or what? But first, I had to woo her. I picked up the phone and called Julia Roberts. I was nervous as hell, as nervous as my first appearance on Letterman, but the conversation went easy. I made her laugh, and man, what a laugh. She was clearly extremely smart, a big intellect. I could tell already that she was easily in the top 3 of storytellers that I'd ever met too. Her stories were so good, in fact, that at one point I asked her if she had written them out ahead of time. This is a nice thing to say about someone. The prospect of this made me burst into tears. We both laughed and agreed that there must be a little more in the tank. I actually find dramatic acting easier to do than comedic acting. I look at a scene and think, I don't have to be funny. This will be a snap. I have been nominated for 4 Emmys in my life so far. 1 in comedy and 3 in drama. He's just so good at everything. Salma Hayek had always had a very elaborate and lengthy idea about how to do a scene, but her long-winded ideas weren't always helpful. There's one scene in which I'm professing my love for her. She suggested that we don't look at each other. Rather, we should look out at our future together. After listening to this nonsense for about 20 minutes, I finally said, listen, Salma, I said, I'm telling you I love you in this scene. You look wherever you want, but I'm going to be looking at you. Matthew Perry knows better than Salma Hayek. Just saying. Clearly. But everything in my life was perfect. I had the most beautiful, famous woman in the world as my girlfriend. I was on the #1 TV show in America. I was making a lot of money shooting a movie that could only be a #1 box office smash. We know, mate, you've said this about 20 times in 20 pages. Where is your editor? You got the #1 everything in the world, but you clearly did not have a #1 proofreader. He gets addicted to prescription painkillers. On David Schwimmer. Matty, he said, I've been thinking, when we renegotiate our contracts, we should do it as a team. We should all get paid the same amount. He was by far the one in the best position to negotiate. I could not believe what he was saying. Needless to say, I was thrilled. I was perfectly happy to take advantage of his generosity of spirit. It was a decision that proved to be extremely lucrative down the line. David had certainly been in a position to go for the most money, and he didn't. I'd like to think that I would have made the same move, but as a greedy 25-year-old, I'm not sure I would have. But his decision served to make us take care of each other through what turned out to be a myriad of stressful network negotiations, and it gave us a tremendous amount of power. By season 8, we were making $1 million per episode, and by season 10, we were making even more. We were making $1,100,040 and that extra $40. Okay, an episode, and we were asking to do fewer episodes. Morons, all of us. We had David's goodness and his astute business sense to thank for what we had been offered. I owe you about 30 million, David. We were still morons. Schwimmer was great because he made Matthew Perry more money. What a friendship. He worked and was close with these people for 10 years and there's really just not that much about them in it. But off screen, things weren't going so well. In late April 1996, I went on Jay Leno and admitted I was single. Dating Julia Roberts had been too much for me. I had been constantly certain that she was going to break up with me. Why would she not? I was not enough. I could never be enough. I was broken, bent, unlovable. So instead of facing the inevitable agony of losing her, I broke up with the beautiful and brilliant Julia Roberts. She might have considered herself slumming it with a TV guy, and a TV guy was now breaking up with her. I can't begin to describe the look of confusion on her face. I am very sure that he's been repeating himself about this too. Also, why do we really need to know who dumped who? Because again, that is something that he repeats. He tells us that, he's so worried about women leaving him that he dumps them first. And it just feels like, when some people think that they win the breakup if they're the ones to do the dumping. Very juvenile and adolescent, but that's how it feels to me. And sorry, I don't have much empathy or sympathy for him dumping and hurting women because he can't manage his own emotions properly. And remember, he was doing this in his 20s, but it carried on until now. I think he's still doing this behaviour now to this day. So I'd quickly booked another movie, Almost Heroes, a comedy starring Chris Farley and directed by Christopher Guest. They paid me $2 million to do that. Sorry, just looking around to see who asked. By the end of season 3, I was spending most of my time figuring out how to get a 55 Vicodin a day. I had to have 55 every day, otherwise I'd get so sick. The pills were not doing what they used to. I had to take a certain number just to not feel sick all the time. See, he is repeating himself. He said both of these sentences on the same page. Edit, Matthew. You must edit. Then Chris Farley died. His disease had progressed faster than mine had. Plus, I had a healthy fear of the word heroin, a fear that we did not share. I punched a hole through Jennifer Aniston's dressing room wall when I found out. Keanu Reeves walks among us. Shut up. I'd just gone off the Vicodin. For those of you watching, this was the beginning of season 4, the best I ever looked on the show. Still not good enough for Jennifer Aniston, but pretty fucking good. Not exactly inspiring sympathy by being this bitter, but okay, mate. He falls in love with someone who goes out with someone else. I've been able to get most people I've wanted, but this one still hurts. Grow up. Which just shows that the exception proves the rule. When I can get someone, I have to leave them before they leave me because I'm not enough and I'm about to be found out. But when someone I want doesn't choose me, I think he's very immature emotionally. But when someone I want doesn't choose me, that just proves I'm not enough and I've been found out. Heads they win, tails I lose. That's a line from Friends. Either way, to this day, if someone mentions her name, Joey's line as well, not Chanel Bong's. If someone mentions her name, my stomach clenches. I think it is time to grow up, mate. Get a different therapist. Fast forward to the hiatus between season 5 and 6 of Friends, and I found myself filming the whole 9 yards. And sure enough, when it came out in early 2000, I had the #1 TV show and the #1 movie. Okay. I called my sort of girlfriend at the time, the wonderful Jamie Tarsis, and managed to say there's something wrong. Jamie was an angel from God. She drove over to my house and poured me into a car and drove me to the nearest hospital. For 30 days and nights I was in the hospital, fed fluids for an IV. The only way to treat pancreatitis was to leave the pancreas completely alone, which meant I could not eat or drink anything for about 30 days. And for every one of those nights, I'd fall asleep with Jamie Tarsis by my side. She had a bed moved in, the whole bit, so I'd wake up and find her there too. I still believe Jamie was a messenger from a benevolent God and that none of us were worthy of her. I know I wasn't. Again, more of the strained pedestaling of women that they can't possibly hope to live up to permanently. It's a temporary thing. I know you're drinking, she said. I had long since gotten over her. Ever since she started dating Brad Pitt, I was fine. And had worked out exactly how long to look at her without it being awkward. But still, to be confronted by Jennifer Aniston was devastating, and I was confused. Once again, my idea was to pull a geographic. I still thought if I removed myself from the situation I was in, I would be able to quit all the drugs and drinking and come out fighting. All I was actually doing was tripling my workload while the drinking and drugs continued to escalate. Because wherever you will go, there you are. Here's right. You can't run away from your problems because no matter where you go, you're still you. He goes to rehab again. Chapter 6. He dumped Jamie to sleep with girls in California. Because of this huge star thing, I had no problem getting dates, and this is how I opened each and every one of them. Hi, sorry I'm late. You look great, by the way. I've been really excited to finally meet you. Pause for appropriate positive response. But I don't want to get off on the wrong foot here. I would continue. I want to be as transparent as possible. I'm an open book. Ask me anything, I will tell you the truth. More warmth would here be shared. On a good day, she would tend to be nodding along, loving my transparency, my emotional pitch, my very air of suave involvement. Then I'd bring the hammer down. I'm not sure what you're looking for, but if it's any kind of emotional attachment, I am not your man. Pause to let this sink in. I'm not going to call you every day, I went on. I'm not going to be your boyfriend. But if it's fun you're looking for, I am your man. It's up front. Like, what? Like, if he really did say this stuff on dates, there isn't an issue. During that time, I met at least 5 women that I could have married, had children with. Had I done so just once, I would not now be sitting here in a huge house overlooking the ocean with no one to share it with, save a sober companion, a nurse and a gardener twice a week. A gardener I would often run outside and give $100 to so he'd turn his fucking leaf blower off. We can put a man on the moon, but we can't invent a silent one of those things. Natasha Wagner was one of those women. Not only is she smart, caring, beautiful, and sexy, she's also the daughter of Natalie Wood and Richard Gregson, and raised by Robert Wagner. By then, Robert Wagner and Jill St. John. I don't know who these people are. Natasha had it all. She was perfect, but I wasn't looking for perfect. I was looking for more. More. So, because I'd done the speech to her and then not properly dated her, we parted ways, and I was left to find even more perfect women when in fact I'd already found them. I mean, he's self-aware. Let's see how long it'll last. I finally realised what the fuck I'd been doing. I'd been looking for an hour or two of pleasure with every woman ever invented, when there was so much life I was missing. Is this why I got sober? To sleep with women? Surely God had something better in store with me than that. 2 pages later. But it was too late. Some kind of agony hook was in her and it was my fault. Is this why I got sober? To sleep with women and then hurt them? Surely God had something better in store for me than that. Bro, let me edit for you. I will do it for... Actually, no, I won't do it for free because you got a $20 million apartment. I will do it for $100,000, but I will do it, okay? Months earlier, I'd started dating a woman called Renee. Suffice to say, Renee had substituted for someone who'd broken my heart on an earlier movie, which put her already behind the 8 ball. By the time I went to Montreal, we were mostly on the outs, but in any case, and I'm not proud to say this, I would have fucked mud at that stage in my life. Canadian mud at that. Well, women aren't mud, but Whatever. Like, I sent this, like, because again, TikTok, people took umbrage with this. I sent that line to a few women and they were like, well, I'm not offended by that. I'm not. I don't know. I had done it. The dream I'd had since the 9th grade had finally come true. The whole 9 yards was no Back to the Future, but Michael J. Fox and I are the only two people who have had the #1 movie and the #1 TV show at the same time. Stop it! I do think that this book will change the way that I view Chandler if I watch Friends again. Knowing how hard he was on himself in every scene, just, you know, wanting to be the funniest and it like tearing him apart if a joke didn't land and the audience went rolling around in laughter. But simultaneously, he thinks that he's the funniest guy in the world. I think it's going to change my perception of him. Chapter 7. After the summer, I had very publicly gone to rehab. At the first table read, obviously all eyes were on me. My pal, Kevin Bright, one of the show's executive producers, had opened the proceedings by saying, anyone wants to talk about their summer vacations? And I took the opportunity to break the ice, saying rather loudly and soberly, okay, I'll start, thus releasing all the tension in the room. Everyone erupted in laughter and applause for me for turning my life around and showing up, looking good and ready for work. Probably to this day, it was the smartest joke I've ever made. She was 23 and I was 36 when we met. In fact, I knew she was 23 because I'd crashed her 23rd birthday party. Our subsequent initial makeout session was in the back of a really messy Toyota. To think I'd spent all that money on fancy cars and here I was in the back seat of a tan Corolla. When we were done, I said, I'm getting out of the car now, mostly because I'm 36. So began 2 years of probably record-breaking amounts of sexual intercourse with no strings attached, both of us following the Friends with Benefits rules to a T. Aaron and Tommy had changed the way America looked at serialized TV with The West Wing, and I had changed how America spoke English via the cadences of Chandler Bing. Seemed like a potent combination. Perry wants to do a new TV show, but manager, the offer's what you get per episode. Me, I know that, thank you. I meant what's the number? Manager, $50,000 per episode. Me, I got more than $1 million per for Friends. Can't we get them up? Manager, doesn't look like it. They want this to be a true ensemble show, and that is what they're offering everyone. Me, I can't believe I have to turn down the best television script I've ever read. Yo, right. Rates are rates, and I get it. Right. I got my rates for sponsors, and it's annoying having to negotiate and haggle. But that's part of business, right? People always want you to do stuff for them at like the least price point as possible, and you don't want whatever. I get that. But if he made that much money from Friends and really, really wanted to do this show because he thought it was one of the best scripts that he's ever read, wouldn't you just accept the lower offer? He hadn't burnt through his Friends' money and still hasn't. He has the money. He's got like a pretty healthy net worth. A lot of A-list actors take pay cuts if they really want to do a film or whatnot just to help fit the film's budget. Keanu Reeves has done this several times to ensure the studio can afford him. Other members of staff can get paid properly. In fact, in The Matrix Revolutions, he gave so much of his own money to like the special effects team and the post-production staff. Just cuz. So eat it, Chandler Bong. You do not get sympathy for me on this, sorry. With that argument in mind, after about 6 weeks of negotiations, we got them off the ensemble idea. I was to be billed as the star of the show, and we got them up to $175,000 per episode. Now, obviously that is an amazing amount of money to be paid a week, but 3 stages down, LeBlanc was being paid $600,000 a week to do Joey, but Joey was a direct spin-off of a Friends. So it makes more sense that he was gonna... I am playing a tiny violin. Passion projects are passion projects. Perry wasn't hurting for spare change. You know, like Kristen Stewart and a bunch of money from doing Twilight, and then just does like indie passion projects and things that she really wants to do, and obviously isn't going to get paid Twilight money for that. Go away, Matthew Perry. The show never took off anyway, so RIP. Chapter 8. We opened at the Playhouse Theatre, an 800-seat venue, and quickly we were selling out. This is when he had his theatre show in London. In fact, we were pulling down massive box office records, but also lousy reviews. For historical accuracy, there were 7 major reviews, and 6 of them were bad. London reviewers didn't like the idea of a Hollywood actor boy going over there and doing a play. It was a huge success though, and I was a playwright and I liked that idea. Sounds a bit like an excuse, I don't know. Maybe we are a bit sniffy, but same, whatever. From London, the play moved to New York. That was not fun. For a start, I had to tone the play down. The Brits didn't care about salty language, but Broadway is Broadway, so I had to leave in it. And not just with the Yank language. I had to kill a bunch of the jokes too. So it was neither well received nor beloved in New York. The New York Times trashed it, calling it synthetic, whatever that means. And I ended up making $600 for the whole New York run. That's not a typo. I had made 1,000 times more, almost to the pound, shilling and pence, during its run in London. All right, Shywolf, chapter 9. There is no greater sound on the face of the planet than a child's laughter. Yeah, there is. In his 40s, he meets someone he likes called Laura. Then after 2 years, he meets a woman called Rome, and he cheats on both of them with each other. It's not cute when you're older, mate. I told myself that because I had not told either Laura or Rome that we were in a relationship, I was not being an asshole. But there was a little piece of me that knew I was doing something untoward because I cared about, well, it's dishonest either way, because like they didn't know about each other. It's dishonest. Because I cared about both of them, and despite outward appearances, I genuinely didn't want anyone to get hurt, including me. He becomes boyfriend to Laura, but still cheats on her with Rome. But after 6 whole months, he ditches Rome and chooses Laura. This is a man in his 40s. Grow up. But by now you know me, unfortunately. You know I can't deal with getting closer and closer to someone. That was what was happening with Laura. The fear was burrowing into me. To break up with Laura would be insane. She had it all. We had it all. We were each other's best friend. Yeah, best friend, and yet you were cheating on her, and I'm sure she didn't know about that. But the intimacy was scaring me, and I knew once again that if she got to know me any better, she would see what I already believed about. I mean, if you're already best friends, she knows you very, very well, and she's not been scared of whatever. As ever, I wasn't enough. I didn't matter. So she would see this for herself, and she would leave me. That would annihilate me, and I would never recover. There was another option. I could remain in the relationship but turn back to drugs and try to maintain a low habit. This would protect me from the fear, allow me to drop my walls and become even more intimate with her. It's just an excuse, really, isn't it? He goes on drugs again and Laura dumps him. He goes to rehab. Rome and Laura become best friends. What in the Wattpad? Matthew Perry once accidentally served a tennis ball straight at Chevy Chase's nuts. That one was for Donald Glover. Chapter 10. I had been on opiates and off opiates and back on opiates for so long that I suffered from a situation that only a subset of the population gets. Opiates cause constipation. It's kind of poetic. I was so full of shit, it almost killed me. I like that line, but I'm pretty sure he said it right at the beginning too. There were other good side effects of sobriety. I was also single for some of it. So I'd go to clubs, but I didn't want to drink. The miracle had happened for me. And let me tell you, no one is more popular at 2 a.m. in a club than a sober guy who says, "Hi, how are you?" to a woman. I don't think I've ever gotten laid more than in those 2 years. I'm not sure about that one. As for me, I would trade places with each and every one of my friends, Pressman, Burko, any of them, because none of them had the big terrible thing to deal with. None of them had battled their entire lives with a brain that was built to kill them. I would give it up all to not have that. No one believes this, but it's true. He says this a lot about his other friends, right? But I think it's short-sighted because other people can have issues in their life other than addiction. It's almost solipsistic. His problems, of course, to him, his problems are going to be the biggest problems in the world. But objectively, that's just not true, is it? He's not really considering other people might have a really shit time going on in their lives without, you know? I've always believed in the theory that God doesn't put in front of you that which you cannot handle. Yeah, well, tell that to victims of human trafficking. I could quit every drug in the history of drugs, but cigarettes were going to be the toughest. Is everyone kidding? I loved smoking. Some days it was my only reason for living. In fact, I would stay up late just so I could keep smoking cigarettes. Relatable. Plus, it was the last thing I had left. Without it, there would be nothing separating me from me. I feel that in my soul, even though I've given up smoking, apart from a very once in a while cheeky vape. But then something happened. I took a bite into a piece of toast with peanut butter smeared on it and all my top teeth fell out. Yes, all of them. That is my nightmare. I didn't add in anything else from this because I'd ran out of things. I'd said enough. I lost the order towards the end because I lost seeing the point of doing this video, but I think I got the most notable things down to talk about. What do you think? Do you think it's sexist? I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind during the edit of this. We'll see. But anyway, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I make new videos whenever I feel like it. I'm almost at 200k, so make sure you do subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you think about this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.